She stood frozen under the stage lights, her hands shaking as she clutched the microphone. Whispers rippled through the crowd, laughter disguised as curiosity. Her shoes were too worn for this carpet. Her dress didn't shimmer like theirs. She didn't belong. Everyone expected her to choke, to shrink, but then she closed her eyes. And something happened that no one in that room would ever forget. Layla Robinson was never meant to be on that stage. She wasn't part of the program, didn't wear the right dress, and certainly wasn't anyone's idea of a finale. She was there to help backstage, quiet, invisible, and easily overlooked. But when the principal's favorite student lost her voice minutes before the closing act, Mr. Keaton turned and pointed at Layla, not because he believed in her, because he thought she'd fail. He called it a chance. But everyone knew what it really was, a test she was never supposed to pass. And still, Layla walked onto that stage, not out of confidence, but because something inside her refused to stay silent any longer. This is the story of how a forgotten girl became unforgettable, of how one voice, trembling, hesitant and pure, forced an entire room to listen. But at that moment, Layla had no idea what was about to unfold. Layla Robinson had learned to be small, not in size, though she was petite for her age, but in presence. She moved quietly through the halls of Rosebridge Academy, keeping her eyes low and her voice even lower. Her shoes squeaked on the polished floors, and each time they did, she flinched, as if apologizing for taking up space. She was 10, but her eyes held the weight of someone who'd seen too much, too early. Her parents died in a car crash when she was 3. Since then, she'd lived with her great-aunt, Miss Geraldine, in a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat on the south side of Atlanta. Miss Geraldine was tough. Church every Sunday, chores every Saturday, but she loved Layla fiercely and never let her forget it. What Layla loved most in the world was music, not TikTok hits or flashy pop songs. She listened to old records, Nina, Mahalia, Aretha, songs her great-aunt played while ironing, songs with pain and power in them, but Layla only sang when no one was listening. She'd hum under her breath while folding clothes, whisper lyrics while waiting for the bus. At night, when the world got quiet, she'd sing softly into her pillow, like a secret only the stars could hear. At school, she was one of 5 scholarship students. Everyone knew. Not because it was announced, but because everything about her said she didn't fit. Her backpack was second-hand, her lunch was packed in reused grocery bags. She was polite, punctual, and invisible. Sometimes the other girls would laugh too loud when she walked by. Sometimes teachers would praise her work, but never call on her in class. Once, during music appreciation, she mentioned Billie Holiday as her favorite vocalist, and a boy in the back asked if that was her grandma. The class laughed. She never answered another question in that class again. At Rosebridge, Layla had a place. It wasn't the front row. It wasn't the stage. It was the background, where the lights didn't reach. But that was before the night of the Winter Gala. Before a microphone was thrust into her hands, before the whole school stopped pretending she wasn't there. It started with a missing soloist, and a mistake that would change everything. Layla didn't talk much about her dreams, not because she didn't have them, but because she knew how fragile they were. The few times she had shared what was in her heart, the world either laughed, or worse, ignored her completely. But there was one dream she nursed quietly: to sing in front of people. Not for fame, not for applause, but because deep down she wanted someone to feel what she felt when she sang. She wanted to matter, even if just for a few minutes. Her great-aunt knew. Miss Geraldine would sometimes pause mid-stitch to say, "One day, baby girl, that voice of yours gonna carry farther than you ever walked." Layla would smile shyly, but never really believed it. Still, she tried. That fall, when the music teacher opened sign-ups for the Winter Gala chorus, Layla handed in her name. Her handwriting was neat, her cheeks flushed with quiet hope. When the list was posted the next day, her name wasn't there. She waited after class to ask, gently, if there had been a mistake. The teacher hesitated, then said with a kind but tight smile, "Sweetheart, we're only including students from the advanced vocal program this year. But if you'd like, you can help with costumes backstage." It wasn't cruel, but it cut deep. Layla nodded, said thank you, and walked out with her eyes fixed on the floor. That night at home, she sat on the edge of her bed and whispered, "It's okay. Maybe next time." Miss Geraldine heard her, and with quiet anger she said, "Maybe next time they'll hear you like I do." But Layla wasn't so sure. At school, she kept showing up. She helped arrange music sheets, ironed robes, and labeled plastic garment bags. She smiled when told what a great helper she was. And every night she'd go home and sing into her pillow, softly enough that her own fear couldn't hear her. The day before the gala, Layla lingered by the stage door longer than usual. She watched the soloist rehearse, a girl with perfect posture, perfect hair, perfect confidence. Layla didn't envy her. She just wished someone had given her a chance to be seen too. She didn't know that chance was coming, but not the way she imagined, and not for the right reasons. The Winter Gala at Rosebridge Academy was more than just a school event. It was a performance of prestige, elegance, and exclusivity. Velvet chairs filled with wealthy parents, string lights wrapped around white columns, and a catered reception that smelled of imported cheeses and polished reputation. Layla stood behind the curtain, holding a clipboard. She wasn't supposed to perform, just assist. Her great-aunt had ironed her best dress the night before, pale yellow cotton, a little short at the ankles, but clean and pressed. She wore it proudly, even if she stayed in the shadows. The final act of the night was supposed to be a solo, Madison Thornton. Madison was everything the school adored, daughter of a city councilman, top of the advanced vocal class, and chosen to represent the values of Rosebridge. But 30 minutes before curtain call, Madison lost her voice. Panic spread backstage like fire in dry grass. The coordinator clutched her headset. Mr. Keaton arrived, frowning. "She can't sing," the music teacher whispered. Mr. Keaton exhaled sharply. "And what do you want me to do? Cancel the finale? In front of these people?" Layla stood quietly in the corner, sorting extra programs into stacks. She wasn't trying to listen, but her ears caught everything. Mr. Keaton turned. His eyes landed on her like a problem he'd just solved. "You," he said. "Robinson, right?" She froze. "Yes, sir." "You sing, don't you? I've heard you humming in the halls." Layla's throat tightened. "Sometimes. At home." "Good enough. You're closing the show." The room went still. The music teacher stammered, "She's not on the program. She hasn't rehearsed." Mr. Keaton held up a hand. "It's a school of opportunity, isn't it? Let's give the scholarship student a moment to shine." He smirked. The word opportunity tasted like mockery. Layla wanted to disappear, but her body nodded before her brain could object. When her name was announced, a ripple moved through the audience. "Layla who?" a woman whispered. "Is she from the outreach program?" Another murmured. "I thought this was the finale, not a charity piece," said a man near the front. Layla stepped onto the stage. The spotlight felt hotter than the sun. Her shoes tapped softly against the floor. The microphone was too tall. Her fingers trembled as she adjusted it. In the back row, Miss Geraldine leaned forward, clutching her purse tightly. The silence wasn't full of anticipation. It was loaded with doubt, dismissal. Layla could feel it in her bones. She closed her eyes and tried to breathe, but the air was thick with judgment. She remembered the music teacher's smile when she said, "You can help backstage." She remembered the boy who laughed at her for liking jazz. She remembered how hard Miss Geraldine worked just to get her into this school. She wanted to run. She wanted to cry. She wanted to wake up. But above all, she didn't want to disappoint her great-aunt. And somewhere, in the back of her mind, a quiet memory floated up. One night, weeks ago, she had been humming at the sink while drying dishes. Miss Geraldine turned, placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "Even if the world don't want to hear you, you sing, baby. Because the world don't get to decide if your voice matters. You do." So Layla stood there, hands shaking, heart pounding, and she sang. The first note barely left her lips. It was soft, almost a whisper, a single fragile line floating into a room that hadn't expected to feel anything. Layla's voice wavered, just enough to betray her fear. But she kept going. It was a song Miss Geraldine used to sing on Sunday mornings while cooking grits and humming to the rhythm of the radio, a lullaby of hope from a time most people in that room had never cared to remember. The lyrics spoke of cracked hands and quiet prayers, of strength hidden in silence. It wasn't polished, it wasn't rehearsed, but it was honest. A few heads tilted, a few murmurs faded. One of the mothers in the front row stopped scrolling on her phone. Layla's eyes remained closed. She didn't sing to impress. She sang like she did at home, when the world was asleep, like a confession no one was supposed to hear. And that's why it worked. Because in that rawness, that trembling honesty, there was something no expensive voice lesson could teach. She wasn't performing. She was surviving. And little by little, the tension in her shoulders eased. Her voice deepened, just slightly. Her breath steadied. She hit a note with more confidence than she knew she had. Mr. Keaton, watching from the wings, shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the disaster he had expected. This was something else. Something dangerous. By the time Layla reached the second verse, a hush had swept across the entire auditorium. You could hear the air conditioning hum. You could hear a cough 2 rows back. But no one dared interrupt her. She wasn't just a kid singing a song. She was holding something bigger than herself. And for the first time in her life, she let herself believe. Maybe her voice was enough. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know if they'd clap or laugh or pretend it never happened. But she had sung her truth, and for the first time, she didn't want to hide anymore. When Layla finished the last note, she didn't open her eyes right away. For a moment, there was nothing. No clapping, no coughing, just stillness. Then one person stood, a man in the back row, tall, dressed in a grey blazer. He clapped once, then again. Others followed. The applause wasn't wild. It was stunned, uncertain, real. People looked at each other, nodding slowly, like they were giving themselves permission to feel something. Some parents stood. A few teachers wiped their eyes. Even students, used to pretending everything was boring, sat up straighter. Mr. Keaton gave a tight-lipped smile, arms still crossed, pretending this had been his idea all along. But the look on his face said otherwise. He wasn't proud. He was caught. Layla looked around, confused, unsure of what had just happened. Her chest rose and fell. Her fingers clenched the microphone like a lifeline. Then her eyes found Miss Geraldine. In the very last row, both hands over her mouth, tears glistening on her cheeks. Layla stepped back, bowed awkwardly, and walked off stage in silence. She didn't smile, she didn't wave, she just breathed. Backstage, a few staff members patted her shoulder. One of the choir girls gave her a thumbs up. The music teacher said softly, "You did good, sweetheart." But before she could process anything, someone new approached. A woman Layla hadn't seen before. Brown skin, bright scarf, and eyes that felt familiar somehow. She leaned in and whispered, "Don't go far, baby. That voice of yours. I've been waiting to hear it." Layla blinked. "Sorry, who are you?" The woman smiled. "My name's Dr. Camille Owens. I run a place where voices like yours don't get ignored." Layla sat alone in the dressing room, her dress wrinkled from the stage lights, her mind racing. What just happened? She replayed it again and again, the silence before the applause, the faces staring, the weight in her chest. Had she imagined the clapping? Was it pity, shock, a fluke? For so long she had taught herself not to expect anything, not approval, not praise, certainly not admiration. So now, even with people smiling at her, something inside her whispered, "They don't really see you. They're just surprised you didn't fall apart." She rubbed her hands together. They were still trembling. The voice of Mr. Keaton echoed in her head. "Let's give the scholarship student a moment to shine." It hadn't been a gift. It had been a setup. And somehow she had made it through. But instead of feeling proud, she felt scared. What if that was the only time she ever got to sing? What if she never felt that brave again? Then she remembered Dr. Owens, the woman's calm, certain smile. The way she said, "I've been waiting to hear it." Layla wasn't sure what that meant, but it felt different. Not like when teachers said "good job" out of habit. It felt real. Still, a deeper question lingered. What if this was a one-time miracle? What if she didn't belong anywhere, not in the shadows, and not in the spotlight either? Just then, her name was called again. This time not over a microphone, but by a voice she didn't expect. Mr. Keaton. He stood in the hallway, clapping slowly. "Quite a surprise, Miss Robinson," he said, forcing a grin. "Didn't know you had it in you." Layla didn't answer. She didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to thank him. Part of her wanted to ask, "Why me?" But before she could decide, a woman's voice interrupted. "Excuse me," said Dr. Owens, appearing behind him. "This young lady's with me now." Layla turned, and for the first time that night, she felt safe. The lobby of Rosebridge Academy buzzed with conversation. Parents gathered in elegant clusters, sipping cider and exchanging compliments, though tonight their words sounded a little strained. Some avoided eye contact. Some asked, "Who was that girl?" Some pretended they already knew. Mr. Keaton stood near the reception table, hands clasped behind his back, trying to reclaim control. But then Dr. Owens stepped forward. She didn't need a microphone. Her voice had presence. "Good evening," she said, smiling. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but I think it's important to say a few words, because something extraordinary happened on that stage." The room quieted. That young girl, Layla Robinson, wasn't scheduled to perform. She wasn't trained by this school's vocal program. She didn't come from a long line of donors or alumni, but she stood up, unprepared, unsupported, and still delivered something honest and unforgettable. Mr. Keaton shifted. "Of course, we're proud of all our students," he began. Dr. Owens turned to him gently but firmly. "With all due respect, sir, I think we both know she wasn't meant to succeed tonight. She was handed a spotlight not as a gift, but as a gamble." Whispers rippled through the crowd. "But here's the beauty of it," Dr. Owens continued. "Sometimes what's meant to break you becomes the very thing that shows you who you are." She turned back to the audience. "I run a foundation for young vocal artists, particularly those who've been overlooked. And I'm here to say publicly that Layla Robinson has a place there, a full scholarship, private training, mentorship, not because of pity, because of power." There was a pause, then applause. Not polite, but real. Layla stood near the back, her cheeks hot, her fingers clenched. She had never been the center of anything before. Mr. Keaton approached her after, trying to recover. "Well done, Layla," he said. "You really surprised us." She looked up at him, and for the first time, didn't shrink. "I didn't sing for you," she said softly. Then she turned to Miss Geraldine, who had just walked in, face glowing with pride. The two of them embraced, right there in front of everyone. No shame, no fear, just love. As the room began to move again, as conversations restarted, Dr. Owens walked over. "You ready?" she asked. Layla hesitated, not because she was scared, because she was choosing. Then she nodded. "I'm ready." And just like that, a girl who had been pushed to the edge of the stage stepped into her future, head held high. The following weeks felt like a new season in Layla's life. She still attended Rosebridge every morning, walking past the same shiny floors, the same polished uniforms, the same curious stares. But something was different. She was different. She didn't walk with her eyes down anymore. She didn't shrink when called upon. She didn't apologize for taking up space. Each afternoon, she traveled across town to the Southern Soul Arts Foundation, where Dr. Owens welcomed her not as a project, but as an artist. There, no one whispered about where she came from. No one asked who her parents were. She wasn't the scholarship girl. She was Layla, just Layla. In one of her first classes, her new vocal coach handed her a sheet of lyrics and said, "You don't have to sound like anyone else. Just tell the truth with your voice. And Layla did. Song by song, she let go of the idea that she had to be small to be accepted. She began to believe that maybe her voice wasn't an accident. Maybe it was the very thing she was meant to carry into the world. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, not in spite of who she was, but because of it. She didn't become famous overnight. There were no viral videos, no headlines. But for Layla Robinson, the girl who once sang into her pillow so no one would hear, this was more than enough. Because sometimes the most powerful stories don't come from the loudest stage. They come from a child who dares to speak in a room that was never meant to hear her. Maybe you've felt it too. That moment when the room goes quiet, not because you're being heard, but because they finally notice you were there all along. Maybe your story hasn't been told yet. Maybe your voice still trembles in private. But believe this, silence doesn't mean you're invisible, and being underestimated doesn't make you less. So tell me, have you ever had to prove your worth just to be allowed in the room? Share your story in the comments. Someone out there might need to hear it tonight. And if this story touched something in you, leave a like. And if you believe in second chances, in small voices rising, in truths that can't be ignored, subscribe to the channel. We're just getting started. And some of the most powerful voices, they're still waiting to be heard.